Thank you, Arvind. That was a great discussion about Intel Capital and their global investments. Intel's been a great partner to us for many years at Silicon Valley Bank. And they certainly are the most global venture investor that I've encountered. We got to Brazil last year for the first time about a year ago, and only to find out that Intel Capital had been there investing for more than a decade. So really quite an amazing story unfolding at Intel Capital and how globally they've been investing. So we're going to get the next panel started in just a moment as we get set up. We're going to be, again, going into a track on global innovation, and the next set of folks are entrepreneurs. My name is Andy Tsao, and I am with Silicon Valley Bank in our Global Gateway, which focuses on cross-border business opportunities. So working with global entrepreneurs is something that's near and dear to Silicon Valley Bank and to our Global Gateway. I'm also the co-chair for this track, and I don't know if my partner in crime is here yet, PK. But both of us thank all of you here for attending our track on global innovation today. I think we have a great program with some terrific speakers, as we've already seen with Arvind, and we're going to get this panel discussion kicked off next. When I heard Arvind talking about Vish's arm twisting, I guess Vish has me not only, I'm a TiE charter member, I'm a sponsor, I'm a co-chair, I'm a panelist, so he really has been working this weekend for TiE. He's done a very nice job. So, without any further ado, let me start this panel. We've talked about, Arvind's really talked about how innovation is happening all around the globe, and I think we have a panel of entrepreneurs that certainly demonstrate that. And as well as a investor who's investing globally, like Intel Capital. So on my right here, I have Mike Baukes, who is a CEO and co-founder from ScriptRock. Next to him is Anand Kamannavar, who is a director with Applied Materials Ventures. Next to him is Valeria Ossovskaya, who is the CEO and co-founder of BioCrypton, and lastly, Eduardo Henrique, who's co-founder and head of U.S. operations for Movile. So what I'd like to do this morning is spend a couple of minutes with each of the panelists to dive into a little bit deeper about their companies, their backgrounds, what's happening in the global innovation hubs that they came from, and how are they finding the experience of expanding globally into the Valley. So maybe Eduardo, if I can start with you, I think Movile has a very interesting history, and if you can kick us off, that'd be great.
So thank you, Andy, for having me here. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Movile started 14 years ago as 5 different companies in Brazil in the mobile area, in the mobile market. So we by the way, Intel Capital invested in one of our companies called Baukes. And after a merger and acquisition process, we became the largest mobile platform in Latin America. So we are the largest mobile company in Latin America. We work in partnerships with mobile carriers, more than 40 mobile carriers in Latin America. And we are expanding to globally, and US is very important. Silicon Valley is very important to this strategy. So here we are in the US market. We are investing a lot in apps basically for Android and iPhone. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Eduardo, you were talking a little bit before about the history of Movile and how you expanded, why you bulked up to begin with in your home market, and how you expanded through Latin America. Can you talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, 12 years ago when we found the company, the plan was we need to build a $1 billion company started from Brazil. So we worked crazy since the beginning. And at 14 years ago, there was almost no venture capital market in Brazil, almost no angels, but we raised some money. Intel Capital is one of the examples, but we raised money in these different companies. And we became the leaders in Brazil with this merger and acquisition process. So we consolidated the Brazilian market. We became leaders in Brazil, and we decided to make the next step to go global. And Latin America, people think that Latin America is one region. It's not. More than 20 countries. And Brazil speaks Portuguese, but all Latin America countries speak Spanish, and it's a different Spanish in each country. And the culture is different. And sometimes one country don't have good relationship with other countries, so it's complex. So we decided to acquire companies in Latin America to expand. We did it in about 2 years, and then the next step to go global is coming to Silicon Valley. So we believe that Silicon Valley is a very important step to go global. From here, we believe that we have networking, we have not only money from venture capitals, but we have connections, we have knowledge from talents that we find here. And that's why we're here, not only to explore US market, but to understand how we can go global from here.
Thank you. Valeria, would you give us you're actually launching a new startup, but you're a repeat entrepreneur. I would love to hear about BioCrypton and then also delve into your prior startup.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me here today, because I think it's a great meeting for entrepreneurs. And I can give you my story, how I started my career in Silicon Valley. I came 1997 to UCSF, University of California, San Francisco, to complete and finish my postdoctoral fellowship. However, at the corridors of university, I didn't heard about people who wanted to win Nobel Prize. Everybody wanted to start a company. Everybody would like to develop new high-tech, biotech product. And 2 years later, I joined my first startup company in South San Francisco as a scientist, a company called TiEcon. 2 years later, a company came public, and I came back to UCSF and joined a group of scientists who were thinking to form another company. A year later, I joined this company as a co-founder. 1 year later, ex-executives from Genentech joined our team. We found company BioSciences. And 4 years later, we sold this company to Sanofi Aventis, global oncology pharmaceutical company, for $500 million in the middle of financial crisis 2009. And then the question was, should I go back to Moscow and start my own company in Moscow? Market was moving forward, biotech was booming, but I made a decision to stay in Silicon Valley and started my new startup biotech company, BioCrypton, for 3 reasons. First, I see enormous infrastructure in the Silicon Valley and microenvironment which feed entrepreneurs with network, connections, help entrepreneurs to grow, connect them to great financial institutions like Silicon Valley Bank and excellent global law firms. So we decided to seed the company in California and grow company in California. However, using our previous experience, we are going global. And at the present, we are developing startup globally, having laboratories in Russia, England, United States, thinking about several laboratories in Europe, because it gives us an advantage. And an advantage is we can use different mentality, different ideas. We can integrate different ideas around the world, because innovation is about ideas. If you go to different places, you definitely find different minds, how people approach the same problem. So at the same time, the challenge for entrepreneurs going global is infrastructure globally. And we definitely need financial institutions which can serve us globally, but also we need to think what will be kind of solution to bring product to the global market. Biotech is very easy because we are a priori global companies, so we have to go to global markets at the same time to be successful. But definitely Silicon Valley, it's a microenvironment which serves as a space kind of mothership, helping us to build the company from the beginning to the end, and what we try to do right now.
Great, thank you. Mike, how about the ScriptRock story? When you started ScriptRock in Sydney, did you immediately think of building a global company? And walk us through that journey a bit.
Yeah, fine. Hey, and thank you for everyone for having us. It's great to be here. So ScriptRock was actually a problem that I'd encountered throughout my career as a banking executive in IT. I'd been working for a variety of different organizations in the UK, Australia, and some organizations here too. However, the one problem that was always apparent was the fact that it was very, very difficult to be able to extract information about systems from individuals in order to be able to find out the quality of the system and to guarantee and ensure that its state was consistent. As a result of that, we basically left the organization that we were working with, a fairly large bank, and decided that if we were to solve the problem, we should start. We started up immediately in Sydney, and we're fortunate enough to be part of a incubator there that gave us a lot of background on what it actually meant to start an effective startup. So we had a lot of financial advice, we had a lot of legal and a very, very good positioning to understand how to attack a global problem, but from a very small segment in the world. That incubation program effectively allowed us to be able to get access to capital in Silicon Valley, and on our first meetings, initially when we traveled out here about 6 months into the program, we began to get introduced to a lot of great people like Andy and SVB and Peter Thiel and a variety of different other organizations that helped us basically form a strategy on how we were going to attack this problem. If we were to look back, you can build a great company anywhere in the world. I think that's a relevant thing, and we've got guys here that are a testament to that. What the Valley really gives you is an ability to be able to get there very, very fast. It gives you an extraordinary amount of access to companies that have been there and done that, so the experience plays a great deal. But more importantly, it gives you an effective roadmap and a collaborative approach to being able to communicate with other people that have been there and done that. So just as the experience is important, almost a sense of vision and be able to attack that and with other people that have been there is a really important thing. So so that's kind of the ScriptRock story, and that's why we're here.
And now turning to Anand, who is a former entrepreneur, and as he told me himself, has gone to the dark side and is now a corporate investor with Applied Materials. So Anand, could you tell us more about the Applied Materials investment strategy and how you're becoming much more of a global investor today?
Well, it's first of all a pleasure to be here at TiEcon. Just want to give you a quick snapshot of what Applied Ventures does and how we are investing globally because we're looking at innovation on a very global scale as well. So Applied Ventures is a corporate venture arm of Applied Materials. Applied Materials, as some of you guys might know, it's just like a mile down the block on this road, is the largest equipment manufacturers for semiconductor, display, and the solar equipment space, and we're looking at other areas as well. Right. Just to put it in context, right? For example, so we are working very closely with our customers to drive down the cost of the transistor, the cost of the pixel, and the cost of the solar cells. So just to give you in context, right? If we had not changed the price of the transistor or the size of the transistor, right, in 1976 terms, then iPod would have been close to a $3 billion system that you would have to buy just for an iPod. But thankfully, the transistor has reduced by around 20 million times. The cost per transistor has reduced so much, right? So that's what enables all these gadgets, the iPhones, the smartphones, and the whole ecosystem around it. So that's where Applied is very much focused on. Having said that, we started the fund around 7 years ago, largely because we saw a few things happening. One is we saw that innovation was not just happening in Silicon Valley. I know this is probably not what the room here wants to hear, but innovation is happening all over the world, right? And largely in our case, if you see our customers have been, we have a few customers here in North America, but we have quite a few customers in Taiwan, in China, in Korea, and Japan. So there's a whole amount of ecosystem that has sprung around those regions where entrepreneurs are solving some of the big problems as well. So as a company, we are investing pretty globally out of our Santa Clara office, and we'll continue to do so. We are we are largely stage agnostic in where we invest, but we are investing pretty much globally. We have investments in India, we have investments in Singapore, we have investments in Australia, looked at quite a few investments in Russia, investments in Israel, in Canada, Europe. So we are pretty global in where we are. We'll go wherever the opportunity is in terms of investments.
And Anand, you were when we were talking earlier, you were describing the Australian investment, and with Mike on your left, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah. So this is an investment in a company called BT Imaging in Australia. It's in Sydney. It was a spin-off from University of New South Wales in Sydney. And this is a very interesting way of looking, a good example, right? For example, not many people know that University of New South Wales in Australia, in the beautiful city of Sydney, is actually one of the leading technology innovators in the solar space, right? If you see at the PhD program today, 95+% of the PhD students are from Asia, and they are going back to Asia to work on problems in their country, right? So this is just an example, right? It's not that only people from Stanford or MIT are working on the leading cut problems. There are people all over the world working on those things. So this was a technology that had made very advances in photoluminescence. This is a way to measure what the quality of your incoming solar wafer is so that you can process it appropriately. So we have looked at this technology and we clearly found it very differentiating. So we decided to make an investment, but again, the market, a lot of it is outside of Australia, right? The solar market is in China, US, and also in Europe. But that's where somebody like an Applied with its global reach and partnerships, we are able to bring them to these customers as well. So the point being is we will go wherever the innovation is. We are not limited by that we have to be within the Bay Area zip code, and that's I think a lot of corporates are working on that theory as well.
Great. So the next question for the entrepreneurs. And this goes around, you've created and founded launch companies in global markets, and you've had certainly one set of experiences launching your business there, and you've come here to the Silicon Valley for international expansion. So talk us through a little bit about how did the experience of being an entrepreneur help you as you come into the U.S. market to compete and to pick up additional skill sets, et cetera? And on the other hand, what challenges did you face as an international entrepreneur when you came here? And maybe, Mike, if I can ask you to address that first. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Andy. Look, I always found that in Australia, you're geographically locked. So there's a very limited spread of companies that you can effectively sell to, particularly in the enterprise IT space, which is what we focus on. But it does teach you one thing, and it does teach you how to be scrappy. It does teach you the value of a relationship that you may have, and it does really teach you that you can win. If you can win there, theoretically, you can win anywhere. When we got to the Valley and the States in particular, one of the biggest cultural shifts, and it's not so edgy. It's more so a very different cultural aspect from the Australian way of doing business. Is that in Australia, because of the geographic lock, it's effectively a winner takes all. Whereas in the States, the thing that I've found very interesting is there's multiple scenarios where you can have a winner, a win-win for predominantly every company that's involved in a deal with a large organization here. So that's one example of like a lesson, a cultural lesson that came quite early for us in a variety of different scenarios with some of the organisations that we're dealing with. I think that's probably a good example. I always find that the cultural differences are the ones that like catch you up constantly. So yeah.
Eduardo?
Yeah, it was very difficult to be an entrepreneur, especially in Brazil. First, when we started, there was no angels and capital to fund a company. So this was the first problem. We started in an emerging market, so the amount of money and we are a B2C company, so we sell to end users. So 20 years ago or 15 years ago, Brazilians didn't have the power, the economic power that they have today to spend on entertainment or on virtual goods. So it was difficult to become a big company in our country. So because of these, we start doing a lot of different things in our market. So for example, we do SMS messages, we do video streaming message, we do mobile commerce. And sometimes when I talk about this here in the US, they say, oh, you don't have focus. And the answer is, no, to be the leader in emerging markets, you have to do a lot of different things. And this, to manage all these issues, it was very difficult. And coming here and there are tons of other problems. Inflation 15 or 20 years ago in Brazil was a crazy issue. The taxes in Brazil, it's completely difficult to understand taxes. And by the way, the taxes are high. So to be compliant and follow all taxes is super complex. And coming here to the Valley, I love it when we were talking before with Valerie, she just mentioned that we have a structure, we have a system to develop your company. So everything is organized and it's clearer than we had in Brazil. So this is good, the good part. The problem and the challenge is the competition is huge here. So the users, the expectations of the users here in the US are higher than we had in Brazil. And the competitors are aware of these for a long time. So to compete against other companies that are here for a long time is difficult. And compete against, to find good talent is also super difficult. So to hire a good engineer here, a good product manager here in the Valley is difficult, it's tough. So I think the main challenge are these ones, but I think we passed through a lot of difficulties in Brazil that we got stronger to come here and learn and go ahead. So I think this is
Great.
the
Yeah.
last lesson.
In my trips to Brazil, the entrepreneurs are fond of saying that it's so complex to do business there that if you can figure it out there, it's actually a barrier to entry for foreign competitors. But Valeria, how about you and Russia?
When I came to San Francisco from Moscow, it was 1997, middle of perestroika. We did not have venture capitalists, financial institution in Russia as a class. You say it's like venture capitalists, and people asking you, like among your professionals, venture who? So finally, like when I came to Silicon Valley, what impressed me very, very much, how easy you can bring the idea from the napkin, which usually happen in a number of coffee Starbucks shops here, idea from the napkin to the product and launch product to the market. If you have a question, you can go to your law firm, to your lawyers and say, hey, it's like, I need actually like connections to this particular experts. Do we know somebody in the network? They pick up the phone, look at the libraries and say, yeah, definitely, because we work with these people in the previous projects. You know, we know with whom you can talk, how you can talk. We know actually like who's the best. So this kind of infrastructure very critical for startups, especially for young entrepreneurs when they're coming from academic institutions like Stanford, etc., MIT. They need to know and have some kind of like a microenvironment to help to grow. This microenvironment didn't exist in Moscow at all. Right now they try to build this kind of infrastructure with the Skolkovo project, Rosnano, but when I came it didn't exist. So the challenges what I can see as international entrepreneurs, definitely different legal systems. Biotech product linked to legal kind of IP, intellectual property, different, we have like number of different legal regulations and contracts. And it's very not easy, it's very challenging to manage it across the globe. Each country has different IP regulations, product has to go through a particular environment. Our business is very regulated with governments like all medical devices and pharmaceutical industry, here linked to FDA, in another countries linked to another regulator. This is what we try to balance, and this is what we try to actually sort it out, and it needs like extra money and extra time. However, we can see definitely advantage to be global, because what we cannot do in the United States, which takes, or maybe it takes too much money or too much time, go through FDA, for example, bureaucracy here, we can do much easier in Moscow. At the same time, what we can't sort it out in Moscow, because sometimes we can't find a good specialist in Moscow to execute particular type of R&D. We go back to the valley and take us 24 hours to look like 60 different candidates with the best skills. This is actually, like, I think, our challenges and advantages.
Anand, what's your view as an investor in terms of the skills of the entrepreneurs, whether they come from markets like outside the U.S. or U.S. teams?
So I think one of the mistakes a lot of us make is, especially if we're investing in from the Bay Area, is to expect that the same kind of mindset or the same kind of skill sets are what's required to be successful in other parts of the world, right? And that's absolutely not true. I think you have to adapt. Let me give you an example, right? So one is, for example, we invest in the display space, for example, right? So one of the things that we've seen is a lot of entrepreneurs have gone back to their home countries to start their own display companies, for example, right? For example, to start a display company here, like, it takes, like, on the screen side, it takes anywhere from 40 to 50 million to get it done. Right. We invested in a company in China that is, like, same, like, people who were educated here in Cambridge and Wharton, and they've gone back and started this company. They were able to do the same thing in less than 10 million, right? So what it speaks is they're very frugal. There are no foosball or ping pong tables or, like, free food stuff, but they're very frugal, right? They know how to, like, as Ronnie said, like, there's a very strong jugaad culture that allows them to develop these tools products very faster. But also you have to remember that a lot of the end consumer products and the population is in these areas, so they are adopting differently. The second half of it is you see a slightly older generation. Like, here you see people, like, just out of school starting companies, and some people are not even going to schools nowadays. That's what I hear. So, but in other emerging markets, you see people are like, maybe a little bit later stage in their life that are starting these companies. A lot of these are expats who have gone back, or people just who have grown through the big companies and, like, and are starting these companies. So there's no like saying, oh, just because you're not young doesn't mean that you're not successful, or vice versa. So I think we need to be very careful to make sure that we don't apply the same standards or the same lens that we view successful companies here than to the companies in other parts, right? Just a different set of skill sets. I think there's innovation happening all over the world, and there are opportunities to be part of those innovation, not just in Silicon Valley, but in other parts of the world as well.
Well, I know we're running short on time, but I'll ask one last question to the group on the example set by many global entrepreneurs, particularly from India and from China, having taken their experiences here and become returnees to go back to their home markets to launch new businesses. So, for the entrepreneurs here, are you staying, or are you going to go home and launch that next startup? Valeria, why don't you start with that?
Yeah, the question is, should we stay or should we go, right? So I was thinking to go back to Moscow, but I think at the present I decided to stay in Silicon Valley because I can see a huge advantage to having accessibility to infrastructure. This infrastructure exists in Silicon Valley and it's a huge support for a startup. Russia is not there yet. They're building the programs slowly but surely. They're investing a lot of money and they try to bring the interest, they try to bring scientists and entrepreneurs back to Moscow. They established like big Skolkovo project, but again, we see our spaceship kind of base in a Silicon Valley and prefer work from this spaceship kind of startup base with a different kind of companies, outsource our projects globally, screen innovation globally, but again, infrastructure is here, microclimate is here, and I feel much more comfortable to stay here.
How about you, Mike?
I'm just focused on building a really big company, so I can't say if I'll decide to go back home.
You're amongst friends.
Bay Area is like accessibility here to technology, accessibility here to people that can speak your language. You know, it's phenomenal. So I dare say that I'll be staying here for quite some time.
Eduardo, any
Yeah, I have concerns about the immigration because it's not working well. You saw Mark Zuckerberg running a campaign to improve these laws about immigration. It's not friendly to come outside U.S. and come here to open a company here. But I'm sure that the government is open to improve it. We came to stay. Of course, there are a lot of things to do here. I agree with Valerie that we have this system here works very well, and I really believe that we can go global from here. Besides this, Brazil is and Latin America is in a very special moment. We will have the World Cup in Brazil, the Olympics in Brazil. And the country is growing, so there are tons of opportunities there. I'm not sure if you are aware about the economic situation in Brazil. The middle class, that is more than half of the Brazilian population now, they have more economic power. So for all kinds of services to these middle class, we have tons of opportunities in Brazil. Colombia is in a great moment as well. Mexico also. So we are keeping efforts in our local market, but yeah, we came here to stay, and maybe in 4 years I have to go to China to open another step to our expansion. But yeah, I would love to stay more and develop our apps and technology from here.
Well, I think, again, you'll all agree with me that we have some great examples of global entrepreneurs and how terrific innovation technology companies are being built in regions far outside the Silicon Valley. So let's have a big round of applause for our Okay, well, it's also my job to pass the baton and introduce our next panel. So the next panel is going to be on global innovation hubs. We've talked to the entrepreneurs. Now we're going to dive in a little deeper in terms of what's happening in some of these new hubs to develop them further. And to moderate that panel is Rebecca Fannin. There's Rebecca, who's an old friend and journalist and author and runs the Silicon Dragon organization. So Rebecca, the baton is yours.